Okay, so on the last one, how you doing again? Welcome to this is the Small Business Chronicles here about the Board Game Cafe. So the last one I talked a little bit about, full disclosure. How I opened may not have been the best way. How my business model is may not be the best way for specifically revenue. Okay, and now I'll talk a little bit about experiences and the different types. Okay. So when I opened, as I said, I needed to prove to myself that the concept of people paying to come in and play would be viable, that people would do it. And I needed to prove that to myself. But I did open with a retail section and the play space. I had 2,700 square feet. I would say maybe 500 square feet in front, 300 maybe, was the retail section, and the rest was play space. And just that alone is not profitable, okay, in my opinion. So let's eliminate the retail, okay, and let's just talk about having people pay to come and play. I don't believe it's sustainable at all. And I can tell you by my numbers, it wasn't very good. Even though I did have the drinks, the food, again, the prepackaged drinks, right? Just sodas, prepackaged food. I'm sorry, but the drinks, the sodas, the juices, stuff like that, the prepackaged sandwiches, chips, cookies, stuff like that. I don't think it's sustainable. If you look at, say, examples around the country that I know of, there is, for example, in Dallas, they had the Dallas Board Game Nights or something it was called. And that's where people paid a monthly membership or whatever to go and play games at this club. But it wasn't there necessarily as a business. And what I mean is for somebody to make a living from. And I could be wrong with that, but I don't think it was. It was just a club where people paid, and they have, like in Columbus, CABS, the Columbus Area Board Game Society. They have the Northern Utah Gaming Society. So they have groups that people pay memberships for, and there is a curated library that people can be part of this club to go ahead and play games. So I don't necessarily think a board game cafe with just admission and games is viable. Okay? So again, that's just my opinion, but let's go ahead and set that groundwork. You can't sustain with just that. Now, you could be a cafe where you want to serve just coffee. So just imagine Starbucks where you have games, right? Because just cafes are sustainable. Just serving coffee, danishes, and things like that, they are. However, we always need to keep in mind here when we have these discussions and talks, if you're going to be a board game cafe, is that really a board game cafe where you just have a shelf with maybe 200 games? Or are you just a cafe that happens to have games? There are those around, and again, because we all know just coffee and danishes, as in Starbucks or just cafes, is sustainable. They are viable businesses. But are you really a board game cafe? And again, I'm not the one to determine that definition. Okay, it's if you want to call yourself a board game cafe, you can do, because again, I opened, right? I opened with no cafe, but I wanted to call myself a board game cafe, and I did. So you can do whatever you want. I'm just trying to give you what I think are the options. All right. So again, you can do it because it does work with just a few board games cafe. Say you just wanted to serve food. If you just wanted to have, say, a restaurant, because again, as I said before, you could be, say, I don't know, Applebee's. We could stick 300 games in there. Would it work? Absolutely. Would it be a board game cafe? I don't know. It's up to you what you wanted to, because your primary revenue would be coming from the food, correct? But there are games that people could play. You could have just drink, because Ben with Snakes and Lattes opened Snakes and Lagers up in Toronto, which was a bar. And I know there was one in DC that I looked up, and there was one in London that I saw. There's a couple of them around. I'm sure there's more than the ones that I just know. But they serve alcohol with some board games. And of course, we know that just revenue from alcohol works. There are bars. So if you throw a couple of games in there, it's going to work, right? But are you a board game cafe? And then last but not least, let's talk about retail. Okay? Because yes, there are game stores who offer free space. And I know there are a lot of people to this day that refuse to even come into my place or any other kind of place. I don't want to pay for gaming. That's your option. You don't have to. But again, a retail store that has play space isn't selling, for example, the entertainment. They're selling the product, which are games, which are retail, and then they are allowing their customers to play, and in return, they're hoping their customers will buy their product. So it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, right? I'm offering you play space, you buy your stuff from me, the Warhammer retail, whatever, blah, 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 magic cards, and that's how you get to play. But with that being said, they're not necessarily offering a guru or people to teach or that aspect. They don't have a library of curated games because there is an expense with the library, right? You're going to have to change that out often because games get used and stuff. So that's the whole kind of discussion. And again, tomato, right? Apples and oranges. I can't really define it, and I'm not quite sure because I don't want to be the source. And again, like I told you, I want to give both sides. I want to give options. We can all discuss this. So I don't know what necessarily the definition of a board game cafe, what you want to call it is, okay? Because it could be a multitude of things. But we have to be clear with what you're going into and your purpose. Because sometimes the other part can be pushed aside. Because with Meepleville, clearly, my number one product is the experience. That's what I tell people. Because you can buy a game online cheaper, right? From, we're not going to mention their name, you know who I'm talking about, delivered right to your door. Cheaper than buying it in my store. You can buy food, and I tell people this. We sell pizza, we sell hamburgers, tacos, but I tell people, hey, if you want like real pizza, like a real pizza parlor, walk right across the parking lot. There's a pizza parlor right over there. You can get real pizza if you want. Because I'm not selling the food. But if you want to have a fantastic time, if you want to have a great experience, if you want to come and play games, have fun, have somebody teach you, recommend games, all that kind of stuff, provide you with that experience, that's what you're coming to Meepleville for. That I can provide. So that is my number one product, is the experience. That's what I'm giving you, okay? So we have to be clear on the direction, the focus, why we're doing this, what we're offering in that, okay? And then one of the questions I had that somebody had asked, I think if I remember correctly, is the revenue, or it might be, okay? Because I essentially have 3 revenue streams, all right? And that's what we're going to be talking about later. We'll talk about numbers getting into that. But I have retail, selling board games, okay? And Meepleville, I've had a lot of people come in and say that I have not one of the, but the biggest retail section they have seen in a board game cafe. Because a lot of board game cafes, if they do sell games, the selection is rather small and limited, maybe to like the party games and all that kind of stuff. But I have a pretty big retail section. I almost could be just a retail store myself. Okay, that's one revenue stream. Second is food and beverage. I do have food. I do have beer and wine, draft, and some cans. But I don't have the lines, right? I don't have kegs in a cooler. And I've seen some of these places. They're beautiful, right? They'll have like 20 drafts with the line and all that kind of stuff. And they have food. You can have, like, they come out on plates. We use little baskets with like checkered paper and stuff, right? With silverware, or a cafe with nice ceramic cups. I don't have all that. And again, it's not because I'm not a food service guy. That wasn't my whole thing. But I do have the food and beverage, okay? Like we were talking about. So retail, food and beverage, and the third is the entertainment, the admission, what people come in for, why we have the curated library, why we're investing in getting new games, getting expansions, why we have people who are there to teach you, to help you, to recommend, because that's a big part of it. And to be honest, it's relatively close as far as revenue for me at Meepleville with those 3. It's almost all about a third. We'll just say for general purposes, it may fluctuate here or there. Food and beverage is a little bit more because, the margins and the cost and all that kind of stuff, it's just a little bit higher. But basically a third. But if you think about it, like I said, I opened with 2,700 square feet. got the place next to me with 1,300. So now, basically, 67% of my revenue is being received or being generated from only 30% of the total square space, right? So you might be saying, well, get rid of the other 70% of the retail space because that only generates 30% of the revenue. However, that's where my heart and soul is, right? That's what I want to do. That's what I'm selling, the experience. That's why I got into this, to teach people games, to have people play games, to get that social interaction, get people together. That's my passion. That's why I'm doing this, for the experience. And I need the food and beverage and the retail to sustain that, right? To help bring and prop those numbers up. Because as I told you right from the very beginning of this video, just that part, people paying for that, I just don't think is sustainable. And in my experience, it isn't. It just isn't. Well, anyway, again, I want to keep these kind of short. So I just wanted to give you a couple of options, the kind of things we talked about, why you're going into this, what is viable, because as I said, we know bars exist, we know cafes exist, we know restaurants exist. So go ahead, throw a couple of games in there, and it could be a sustainable business. But is it a board game cafe? Is it what you want to do? Okay, so just remember that. I've always been about the experience, the entertainment. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do, and I need those other things. The retail and the cafe. Don't necessarily need the retail. You can just do it with the food and beverage. So again, it's just a mix because we all have to grow into. We don't know. Sorry. And again, that's something that, like I told you, my way may not be the best way because I grew into this, right? I didn't start off from day one, and I feel that's probably the more successful way, what you should do. But anyway, keep watching. Thank you for the comments. I'm gonna go ahead and get back to this, end this short. We'll do some other talks later. But thank you for watching. Keep watching. We'll do some more stuff soon.